Maria James was stabbed 68 times in the back of her bookshop. The case went cold.
My brother grew up without a mum and I grew up without a mum. We just want an answer.
On a cold winter's day in 1980, the quiet suburb of Thornbury in Melbourne, Australia, became the epicenter of a chilling mystery that continues to baffle investigators and haunt the local community. The case of Maria James, a 38-year-old bookshop owner and devoted mother of two, reads like a dark thriller, its pages filled with twists, unsettling revelations, and an enduring sense of injustice. The morning of June 17th started like any other for Maria James. Her quaint bookshop, nestled on High Street, was a beloved local haunt. Regulars would drift in, greeted by Maria's warm smile and the comforting aroma of aged paper and fresh coffee. But as the clock ticked towards noon, the routine tranquility was shattered. Maria's body was discovered in the rear of her shop, brutally stabbed 68 times. The community was left in shock, grappling with the horrifying violence inflicted on a woman they admired and loved. From the outset, the investigation was fraught with difficulties. The crime scene was chaotic, with officers inadvertently contaminating evidence. Initial leads seemed promising, but soon dissipated into dead ends. Thornbury streets, once filled with the soft hum of daily life, now echoed with whispers of fear and suspicion. This is the unsolved murder of Maria James. Stepping into Maria James's residence on High Street, Thornbury, is like stepping back in time to a day forever marked by tragedy. The dual-purpose property, both a home and a second-hand bookshop, once bustled with the daily rhythms of life and commerce. Today, the cozy corners that used to overflow with stacks of novels and children's books now seem to cast long, eerie shadows, filled with the weight of a history steeped in violence and mystery. Maria James was a beloved figure in her community, known for her warm demeanor and unwavering devotion to her two sons. On the morning of June 17, 1980, she was seen by several witnesses in and around her High Street property, engaging in what appeared to be a typical day. However, the normalcy of that morning was shattered in a matter of hours. At approximately 11:55 a.m., Maria called her ex-husband John, leaving a message for him to return her call. She didn't specify the reason for her urgency, but mentioned someone was in the shop. When John returned her call shortly after, Maria answered but quickly asked him to hold on. John overheard a conversation between Maria and another person, although he couldn't discern the details. A sense of unease crept in as it became apparent something was amiss. When Maria did not return to the call, John left work and headed to the bookshop to check on her. John arrived at the property shortly after midday to find both the front and back doors locked, though the open sign was still displayed. He forced his way inside only to be confronted with a scene of horror. Maria's lifeless body was discovered in her bedroom, bound and stabbed numerous times. She had sustained severe injuries to her head and face, indicative of a ferocious attack. As John grappled with the shock of finding Maria, he noticed that the front door, which had been locked upon his arrival, was now inexplicably unlocked. This unsettling detail suggested that the perpetrator might have still been inside the premises when John entered. The terror of that possibility lingered as he realized the killer could have slipped past him in those frantic moments. Further compounding the mystery, two separate eyewitnesses reported seeing a man running away from the scene shortly after Maria's body was discovered. This man has never been identified, and police continue to appeal for information about his identity, releasing images in the hope that someone might recognize him and come forward. The ferocity of the attack, combined with the binding of Maria's hands, suggested a deeply personal rage. Yet Maria was known to have no enemies. The crime scene offered scant evidence, a few fingerprints, some strands of hair, and the murder weapon, a bloodied knife from Maria's own kitchen. The details painted a picture of a crime both intimate and horrific, leaving the community and investigators grappling with the question of who could commit such a monstrous act against a woman so widely respected and loved. As forensic teams combed through the scene, the weight of the unresolved mystery grew heavier. The shadows cast by that fateful day still linger over what was Maria's bookshop, serving as a haunting reminder of a life violently cut short and a killer who was yet to be brought to justice. By modern standards, the investigation into Maria James's murder was unusual, to say the least. In the immediate aftermath of her death, a team of homicide detectives set up a temporary headquarters in Maria's living room, just behind her High Street Thornbury bookshop. They deemed it more efficient to work directly from the scene rather than commuting from Fitzroy Police Station. Each day, they would walk past the blood-stained carpet of the bedroom crime scene to their makeshift office, a grim reminder of the violent act they were trying to solve. For months, the detectives pursued a dizzying number of leads, determined to find Maria's killer. The list of suspects was long and varied, each potential lead bringing its own complexities and challenges. One early suspect was a real estate agent who operated just 2 doors down from Maria's bookshop. Maria had been in a relationship with him until she discovered he was married. The detectives thoroughly investigated his alibi, that he was showing a client a house at the time of the murder, which eventually held up under scrutiny. Another suspect was a local loner known for his odd behavior. He had tried to sell explicit magazines to Maria and was seen at the bookshop on the morning of the murder. When detectives searched his home, they found a receipt for the dry cleaning removal of a blood-like substance from his trousers and binding twine in his yard, eerily similar to what was used to bind Maria. Despite these incriminating details, DNA evidence eventually ruled him out as the perpetrator. There was also a telecom worker who had a friendly relationship with Maria. His potential involvement seemed plausible until days after being interviewed by the police, he tragically committed suicide. This abrupt end left investigators questioning whether they had been on the right track or if his death was a coincidental, desperate act unrelated to the case. Despite these extensive efforts, each promising lead ultimately evaporated into thin air. The detectives' relentless pursuit yielded no concrete evidence or definitive suspects. The small community of Thornbury was left reeling, their sense of security and trust shattered. The case grew colder with each passing day, week, and month as the trail seemed to fade into obscurity, leaving behind a haunting question. Who killed Maria James and why? Years passed, and the memory of Maria James began to fade from the public consciousness. But for her sons, Mark and Adam, the pain of losing their mother never dulled. Determined to uncover the truth, they began their own investigation. What they discovered would send shockwaves through the community and reignite public interest in the case. In the early 2000s, journalist Rachel Brown took an interest in the Maria James murder. Her investigative podcast, Trace, brought new attention to the case, revealing disturbing details that had previously been overlooked. One of the most shocking revelations was the potential involvement of clergy members from the local Catholic Church. In the days leading up to her murder, Maria James faced a revelation that would shake any mother to her core. Her son Adam, who has cerebral palsy and Tourette syndrome, confided in her that he had been abused by their local priest, Father Anthony Bongiorno. This was no ordinary priest. He was a trusted family confidant and frequent babysitter to the James boys. Maria, a devout Catholic and regular parishioner at St. Mary's, where Bongiorno was a popular figure, decided she could not let this atrocity go unchallenged. She planned to confront him on the very day she was killed. On that fateful day, an electrician named Alan Herco was performing work at St. Mary's Presbytery, located a mere 170 meters from Maria's bookshop. His memory of that day remains vivid even decades later. Herco recalled seeing a short, stocky man dressed in black clerical attire, with his hands and forearms smeared with fresh blood. The man also had blood on his ear and neck. When Herco offered assistance, the man claimed he had cut himself on either some roses or a fence, but vanished before Herco could fetch a first aid kit. Moments later, Herco heard a woman's urgent, almost screaming voice speaking in Italian from inside the presbytery. The man Herco saw that day was later identified as Father Anthony Bongiorno. Herco distinctly remembered the encounter because upon returning to his workplace, he learned of the gruesome discovery at the bookshop. Despite the shocking sight, Herco initially kept the information to himself due to the police ruling out Bongiorno as a suspect, influenced by a DNA mix-up. Maria James's intention to confront Bongiorno may have placed her directly in harm's way. The inquest into her murder revealed another sighting of a man in black priest robes, seen standing in the doorway of the bookshop around 11 a.m. on the day Maria was found. The man's demeanor, described as unsettling, further deepened suspicions about Bongiorno's involvement. The possibility that Maria was silent to protect these dark secrets within the church cast a long and ominous shadow over the investigation. The church, an institution Maria had deeply trusted, now seemed enshrouded in a web of abuse and cover-ups. These revelations brought new, disturbing dimensions to the case. The suggestion that Maria James's murder was not a random act of violence, but a deliberate silencing to protect powerful individuals in the church added a layer of sinister complexity. The investigation into Maria James's murder has been hampered by a series of critical errors and mishandlings of evidence. The ABC's Trace podcast brought these issues to light, leading to a new coronial inquest in 2021. However, the conclusion that Maria was killed by an unknown person echoed the findings of the original 1982 inquest, leaving her family and the community still searching for answers. The murder investigation was plagued by a litany of errors from the start. Early on, Maria James's bloodied clothes and pillow slips vanished from police storage, a devastating loss of potentially vital evidence. Then, sometime between 1994 and 1999, a pillow from an unrelated crime scene was mistakenly included with Maria's exhibits. This rogue pillow yielded a DNA profile that detectives incorrectly believed belonged to Maria's killer. For over 14 years, this erroneous evidence misled the investigation, causing detectives to wrongly rule out numerous suspects. Despite these setbacks, advances in forensic technology have brought a renewed sense of hope. Cold case detectives have re-examined the remaining evidence with modern techniques, uncovering new leads that were previously undetectable. The persistence of Maria's sons and the dedication of journalists like Rachel Brown have been crucial in keeping the case alive, continuously urging authorities to correct past mistakes and pursue justice with renewed vigor. For Mark and Adam James, the search for their mother's killer has been a lifelong pursuit.
Everyone can lose their parents, but our mum was murdered in a ritualistic and very violent way.
We'll help me and Mark put an end to this.
The trauma of losing their mother in such a violent manner, compounded by the knowledge that her killer has never been brought to justice, has left deep scars. Their tireless efforts to uncover the truth have been both a source of strength and a relentless burden. Mark James in particular has been vocal about the failings of the original investigation. He has called for greater accountability and transparency from the police, as well as more resources to be dedicated to solving cold cases like his mother's. His advocacy has brought renewed attention to the case, inspiring others in the community to come forward with information. As the 44th anniversary of Maria James's murder approaches, the case remains one of Melbourne's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The unanswered questions continue to loom large. Who killed Maria James, and why? Was she silenced to protect dark secrets within the church? Or was her murder the result of a more personal vendetta? In a bid to finally crack the case, Homicide Squad detectives have announced a $1 million reward for information that could help solve the 1980 murder of Maria James in her Thornbury bookshop. This significant reward underscores the ongoing commitment to finding the truth and delivering justice for Maria and her family. The hope is that this financial incentive will encourage anyone with crucial information to come forward, potentially shedding new light on this enduring mystery. The story of Maria James is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the impact of unresolved trauma. Her murder, marked by brutality and mystery, remains an open wound in the fabric of Thornbury. As new generations discover her story, the hope persists that one day justice will be served and the shadows that have long haunted this quiet suburb will finally be lifted. In the meantime, the memory of Maria James lives on in the hearts of her sons and the community that continues to seek answers. Her bookshop, once a haven of knowledge and comfort, stands as a silent testament to a woman whose life was tragically cut short and whose story remains unfinished.